This video is inspired by a conversation that I had with a student recently who's looking to get his first true jazz guitar, a full hollow body Archtop. And it's also informed by the last 8 or so years that I've been dealing with what is basically the worst jazz guitar that you could own if you actually need to plug it in. Not to say it's a bad guitar, it sounds really great, which is why I've put up with it this whole time, but there's a lot of things that I've tried over the years to help mitigate the feedback issue that is very prone to this type of instrument, and so I thought I'd compile it all here, as well as with some other information that I've read on forums and that I've talked with other professional jazz guitarists about. As we move forward here, I'm going to link what I can in the description. Some of it is going to kind of be a DIY thing that you have to figure out on your own. But I've also put together a PDF here, just a one-page PDF of everything that I'm going to discuss in this video. So it'll be down there to download. And at some point, I'll probably have a web page up on my website with this same information. So let's start with number 1. And granted, if you already own a jazz guitar, this is not really something you can change. These next few minutes are basically just going to be me ragging on why this is the worst guitar I could have picked when it came time for me to pick out a jazz guitar. But basically I want to start here talking about guitar construction. We're going to split it into 2 groups. You can either go with a laminate construction Archtop, or on the other side you can go with a solid wood carved top guitar. And it's not like in the flat top steel string world where laminates are generally like student model instruments, more affordable, and the solid wood is a pro grade instrument. Really, in Archtop land, both can coexist, and they're totally different beasts. So the laminate guitar, it's a couple sheets of wood laminated together. It's not like a fake wood or anything. It is wood, just a couple sheets laminated together and then formed into an Archtop here. A laminate construction is going to be much more feedback resistant. It's not going to ring as well acoustically. It's not going to be as loud or as live or as bright as a solid wood carved top instrument like this, but they are fantastic guitars, and they just have a different sound than a solid wood instrument. This is an Eastman AR810 that I bought back in 2016. When I picked it out, I just fell in love with the acoustic tone. I had played it kind of at a lower volume at the shop, and I went home with it that day, and I've been really happy with it ever since. It is a solid wood carved Archtop here, and something else I'll talk about is the size of the body. This is a full-bodied here. Sometimes you'll see thinner Archtops, full hollow Archtops, but this is full size here, maybe about 2.5 inches on the sides. It's also very large. I don't know if you can tell. This is 17 inches side to side. The lower bout is the measurement you'll probably be looking at. You'll find Archtop guitars ranging anywhere as small as 14 inches to 15, 15 and a half. 16 is pretty standard for a large body instrument. This is 17, and I've seen it even go as high as 18. The larger the body, the more easily it's going to feed back, probably. There's a lot of other things that affect it, but generally speaking, a larger body is going to feed back a little bit sooner than a smaller one would. Now, something else to add here, having to do with construction, and I realize I'm going to probably make some enemies here, but it's the finish of your guitar. The finish of your guitar does affect the sound and just all, in general, how your Archtop plays, how you're able to perform with it. The thicker the finish, the more the acoustic tone is going to be dampened, the less susceptible it's going to be to feedback. So you can go in 2 directions here, just with laminate and with solid carved top guitars. If you want a thicker finish, it's going to be a little bit more durable. It's also going to be more feedback resistant, but at the expense of not being as acoustically live. If you're plugged in all the time, I think a laminate polyurethane or nitrocellulose finish is going to be great for you. If you really want to have a nice acoustic tone, which I've enjoyed lately, nitrocellulose is a little bit thinner than polyurethane, but it's still on the thicker side. This guitar is actually a violin varnished. You can find some higher end Archtops with a violin varnish. This was also, I believe, when I bought it anyway, the shop clerk told me that this was a prototype Eastman. This was before they even actually offered a violin varnish as a finish on their guitars. So this is a violin varnish, and you can see, I'll put some close-up B-roll. It's very checked. It's damaged in a few spots in the last 8 years. I mean, I do a fair amount of gigs with it every year, but it really has aged a lot in those 8 years. It's very easy to damage, and especially a lot of this damage I can thank Air Canada for making me check it under the plane years ago. But so there you go. That's guitar construction. That's number 1. Second, here we're going to talk about kind of similar to construction, is the pickup type. Again, something to be aware of, not something you can change if you already have an Archtop guitar, but just the idea of basically splitting it into two worlds here. You can have a mounted pickup, which is a pickup that is actually in the top of your guitar and is sitting on the top of the instrument. You're going to notice a common theme here, and that's just adding weight to your instrument. So a mounted pickup, which is sitting on the top of the guitar, is going to add weight to the instrument. It's going to be a little bit less susceptible to feedback than a floating pickup here, as I have. This is a 12-pole Kent Armstrong PAF. It was an upgrade to what this guitar came with, but it's still a floating pickup. Floating pickups are usually either attached to the neck of the instrument or to the pick guard. So in other words, this is basically a fully acoustic instrument. There is nothing touching the top of the guitar. It's an acoustic guitar with a magnetic pickup, and you can understand why that might be more susceptible to feedback than a mounted pickup would be. Something else to add in is, especially if you have mounted pickups, the number of pickups, right? A lot of jazz guitars typically just have the neck pickup, but you might see some, especially Gibsons, with an added bridge pickup. 2 pickups, twice as heavy as just one. It's going to add even more weight to the top. The controls as well. Typically, if you have a mounted pickup guitar, you're going to have the controls mounted in the top of the instrument as well. On a floating pickup guitar, they're usually stuck underneath the pick guard or attached somewhere else that's not actually making contact with the top of the instrument. Number 3, a great way to fight feedback on your Archtop is to cover the sound holes. And there's a number of different ways we can do it. On a steel string acoustic, it's very easy because this size is very standardized by now. You just walk into a Guitar Center and you can buy this rubber feedback buster that goes in there. And it'll basically work the same way as it would on an Archtop. It's going to prevent the air from moving in and out of the instrument when you play. It's also going to add a little bit of weight to the top. Now, on an Archtop guitar, the F-holes come in all different shapes and sizes. So like I said, it's a little bit more difficult. Back in the day, there used to be this guy, his website was like DougsPlugs.com or something. And because I had like one of the first versions of the AR810, he didn't have this design yet. I actually took a piece of paper, taped it to my guitar, and shaded it with a pencil. I put it in an envelope, mailed it to him. And what he used to do is he would take basically foam that you would find in a cheap pair of flip-flops, and he would cut it out custom to fit your instrument. And I still have those plugs. I use them. However, I think he's retired, or I know it was like a ton of work for, to make each of those, and he probably wasn't making great money for the time that he spent doing it. So that's what you used to be able to do. You could still try that yourself if you wanted to. Go to the store and get a cheap pair of flip-flops with a razor blade and try and custom cut out some rubber stoppers here. Here's what I'm using. Enjoy this picture from 2017 of me playing a bar chord on that guitar with the feedback busters in there. They work really well. A couple other things you could do is just throw some tape over the F-holes. And I'll say this with kind of an asterisk. Do this at your own risk. I would definitely test the tape that you're going to use in a smaller, inconspicuous spot of the top. If you've got a guitar with nitrocellulose or polyurethane finish, it's pretty durable. You're probably going to be fine. I would never do this on my varnished guitar because as you can see, it's chipping all over the place and the tape might pull even more off. But you just basically want to go with tape that really doesn't have much adhesive quality at all. It doesn't have to be super airtight. It just has to cover the holes. So something like electrical tape I think would come off pretty easily. Masking tape, just standard blue painter's tape. I've heard of people using clear packing tape, like Scotch packing tape. I think this is going to be too sticky, and it might leave residue on your instrument, but that's going to be less noticeable than something obnoxious like this. Although, probably if I had to pick one, I think the painter's tape would be the least damaging to your guitar. Maybe you can find a color that matches a little bit better than the blue. This next one comes from a friend of mine. He has heard of players using a clear vinyl type material, which is self-adhesive, that you can cut to a custom size, and that just sticks over the F-hole. I'll leave a link down in the description to what I believe people have been using for that. Now, if you have something to add here that I skipped over, or something you've heard about people using or that you've used yourself, just leave me a comment down below. I'd love to learn about more ways to try and fight feedback here. The next place I want to go, number 4, is intentionally dampening the top of your instrument, adding a little bit of weight to it in one way or another. And what I've done on my Eastman, although it is a floating pickup guitar, I've actually folded up very tightly a piece of paper, and then I've wrapped it in gaff tape. And this is going to be very hard to find on camera. I'll try and get a good shot of it. But I've basically just wedged it in between the pickup and in between the pick guard and the top of the instrument. It's adding just a little bit of weight in those two places, and I think that is helping with feedback a little bit. Something else you can do, I don't do this personally with this Archtop, but I've done it on my Martin or any other acoustic. I've done it on my classical because that also has a very thick finish, not like a varnish here. And this is using basically a self-adhesive rubber pad here. And where you can find these, I spent a lot of time looking on Amazon because I couldn't find this exact one, but I found something that is very similar. You're going to want to make sure that it's self-adhesive, not that it's sticky or has some sort of glue, but just in the material itself. I believe it's silicone, and basically as long as the back of it is clean, it's going to naturally stick to the top of the guitar. This is a sunglasses holder. If you go on Amazon, you type in dashboard, sunglass mat, or rubber, self-adhesive, something, you'll come up with a couple options, and I linked the one down there that I think would work. Now you could also take this and custom cut it to fit over the F-holes. Maybe you order one large sheet and you wanted to fit like a large portion of the top with this material. You could definitely do that. And as it goes on, like I stored it in my case, I just fold it in half, but as it ages a little bit, it picks up some dust and it won't be so sticky. All you have to do is just run it under water for a little bit, let it dry, and it'll be sticky again. So let me show you how this would work on the Martin, just for example. The best place that I've found, and this is for, typically I'll use this on my classical. I'll put it just behind the bridge here because this is a large flat portion of the top. And adding a little bit of weight there really helps. You can make it look a little bit nicer if you want, but that's the premise of it. One more thing here with regards to adding weight to your instrument. I have also heard of people stuffing things in their guitar. The downside is that it's going to add weight to your guitar. It's going to get considerably heavier, especially if you pack it tight. It's also going to be a little annoying to get out if you need to remove it. So this is kind of a more semi-permanent thing. This is not something you're doing every time you go to a gig and get home, take it out. But a common thing is just to use paper towels, or mostly what I've heard of is cotton balls. I think George Benson would do this, right? Get a couple packs of cotton balls. You're going to need a lot, actually. You might spend like 30 bucks on cotton balls and just feed them through. Keep packing them in. Your guitar obviously is going to lose a lot of acoustic volume, as it will with anything that I've mentioned regarding dampening the top, but played amplified, it's going to be much more feedback resistant. This is a thing that a lot of players have done over the years. Number 5 is equalization. If you've got a great amp, that amp might have a very comprehensive EQ section. I've got this little Henriksen amp that I bought from a friend of mine, and it's got a 5-band EQ. Specifically, if you've got an amp maybe with a mid control where you can actually select the mid frequency and then either boost or cut that, that's going to help you find the frequency that tends to feed back more than the others and drop that one out. EQ is a great way to control this. If you don't have an amp that has a very comprehensive EQ section, you can also do this with a pedal. Something like the Empress Parametric would be like the top choice. That's a very expensive pedal. It's $350. A parametric EQ, I think, is just about the best thing you can do. Something like the MXR 10-band would also work. And now a graphic EQ like this here is not going to be as precise as a parametric, but it might be helpful. This is on the budget end of things. This is the Sonic Cake tone group, which is basically like the MXR 10-band. It's got a couple frequencies, 31.25, that's useless, 62.5, that's useless. That's below the low fundamental E on the guitar, which is about 80, 82. 125, 250, 500, those are all frequencies that can be prone to feedback on an Archtop. Typically, it's kind of like that low mid-range stuff. You can find whichever frequency is the one that's giving you trouble and just drop it down a little bit. It will affect your tone, obviously, but hopefully that'll allow you to get a little bit louder without going into a huge booming feedback. This isn't sponsored or anything, but I had done a demo for Sonic Cake in the past, and if you wanted to get this pedal, it's just 50 bucks. They actually gave me a discount code, so I'm going to have this linked in the description along with that discount code. I think it's like 10 or 15% off for you. Number 6 here is amp proximity. It's just basically the location of the amp relative to your guitar. And this is a terrible jazz amp, but I'll use this to demonstrate. Right now, the amp is off to my right. I'm a right-handed player, and the speaker is pointed right at the body of the instrument. This is going to cause a ton of feedback. When I'm playing out most of the time, and in fact, I think actually, I know I made this number 6, but I think this is the easiest way to fight feedback, and in most situations, it's been enough for me, unless I'm in a ridiculously loud situation like a big band or something like that. But just the idea of placing the amp smart in relation to where you're sitting here. So let's try this. The amp is now off to my left. The speaker is pointed kind of at the headstock instead of at the body. So just simply adjusting where the amp is, where you're sitting in relation to the amp, can help a lot. I also find that if I'm sitting down, or especially if I'm standing up, really pointing that amp up so it's at my ears and not firing directly horizontal into the body of the guitar, just very, very helpful amp proximity. So there's my list of everything that I've personally done or I've talked to other people who have tried. Just a huge list of everything that I think might help you fight feedback with your Archtop guitar a little bit better. If you have something to add again, please leave a comment down below. This is a place where we can share our experience. I'm also going to link a thread to jazzguitar.be. It's a fantastic website. It's a forum. And when I was researching this issue, this was years and years ago, when I'd gotten the guitar and realized I had this feedback issue, this was a thread that I accessed and I read. And as I was doing a little bit of research just to fill everything out for this video, I stumbled across it again. So I'm going to leave that in the description, as well as links to a bunch of the things that I had talked about. Again, you can download the PDF. It'll be on Google Drive. I might also at some point have all this information in a single web page on my website. So take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.